It's another Wednesday, and more news has popped up, and yeah, we're just gonna get started. Not a lot really connects to last week or even the week before, but there's a few things going on that I think we can relate back to. But let's get started with Tilting Point. Tilting Point has launched another kind of financial backing for devs. It's 150 million, I think. Yeah. Uh, User acquisition program to help developers scale their games and apps. They've done this before. I don't really remember when the first one was, but I'm pretty sure the second one that I remember is 2018. They might have done more than that, but I don't really remember. But a lot of studios are signing up for it that are a lot smaller, or just in general, a lot of like app distributors or sites that are doing like kind of online games. There's a bunch that goes into it. Overall, it's just interesting to see, especially since they had laid off about, I think, almost 100 employees last September. So I don't know. Uh, I do think it's a little weird to have that and then have this giant kind of setup for such a huge amount of money. But it also could be that they were looking to downsize because they didn't need that many. But I don't know. It's mostly financial backing. I'm sure there's some strings, as there always is, and stuff. Uh, but as said by the CEO, it's a strong tools for developers looking to scale efficiently while allowing them to strategically utilize their available cash on other priorities. And that's the thing is when you get into a development studio that is a little bigger than one person. Not that as one person you don't need to do this, but money flow is very, very important. You need to get the exact excitement. You need to get an exact amount of money to hopefully succeed in the future. You're not just looking to break even, you're looking to make a profit so you can maybe go on to other projects. Or if you're done with video game development, break even so you could say, hey, at the end of the day, I tried. But it's interesting to see financial backing in any sort of department, especially since the last time was in 2018. It's been 7 years, which video games in general has taken a weird point for the past 7 years. But that's neither here or there. We'll see what happens with a lot of this. I don't know the exact list. Among the first to sign up are Mythical Games, Begin, and a soon to be announced rapidly growing web based gaming hub. Financial backing needs to scale successfully without sacrificing independence. We'll see what happens with that. Freely given money is not always free, and also at the same time, not always the solution to your problems. Uh, the uh, I'm sorry, I read that really wrong. But the studio behind the Until Dawn remake, which is a very unneeded remake in my opinion, Ballistic Moon, is effectively closed. This is not really a surprise. It's already been confirmed last year that they were scaling down massively. The only thing that kind of was up in the air was whether they had enough to maybe fix out some bugs that were pretty much reported instantly. It's one of those things where Until Dawn didn't need a remake, and they couldn't get a single publisher to look into them or even have enough backing to, I guess, patch the game from Sony. But ultimately, it's just another example of all these different companies being closed their doors. We've talked about Monolith already. We've talked about Players First, Warner Brothers closing another studio. But one that I haven't mentioned is uh, the Callisto Protocol developer Striking Distance being putting a bunch of layoffs, and then there's Bosa Games, I think, is also laying off. There's a lot of layoffs going in, and it's not a surprise that this company, which didn't do that amazing, would definitely do some layoffs. So it's just sad to see, really, but at the same time, I think this is our only project, so it was kind of to be expected if you knew the writing on the wall. But more exciting stuff, there's always studies going on of why do gamers play games? And it gave some statistics which I think are very interesting to kind of read. I'm gonna open this image in a new tab so I can read it. But it seems that uh, they did. It looks like about 9,000 different gamers, which is a pretty small uh, number in the grand scheme of things. But it's interesting to see the type of averages that pull up. 53% have the escapist mindset, relax and escape reality. I think is a little high, but 14% is challenger, challenge myself and achieve something hard. Builder, satisfy my creativity. That's at 10%. 10% is also tying with builder at competitor, compete and win. And then 8% socialite, socialize with friends and meet new people at, I think I said 8%, but there you go. And then 4% is other to round up to 100%. Actually, at least I hope so. I realized that it doesn't add up to 100%. So a little whack, but it could be the decimals here that we're not seeing. But when it comes down to the overall kind of like information about this, is I feel it's very skewed. One of the things is I don't think there's actually that many people that like Challenger like as a thing. There are some people, don't get me wrong, but that's much more in like lines with the competitor aspect of it, like achievement hunting, which achievement hunting I would argue is much more in competitor because you're competing against a bunch of other people for achievement hunting. But ignoring that, I do think challenger is not usually like as high as people think here. I do think it's a little skewed. Maybe the questions are a little weird for this. Builder also seems pretty high, but then again, there's a lot of sim games. There's a lot of building games like Roller Coaster Tycoon, Minecraft, even like smaller games that come out usually have a building element. And a lot of people like to even go into like the Unity engine when you could, or Unreal Engine when you can, to kind of build something and see what you can do. So I do see the builder being a little bit higher than this. The competitor I do think is a little weird to see it this low. I thought it would be a lot higher because I think multiplayer is a pretty big facet of gaming nowadays. I don't think it's as big as it was, say, 10 years ago, but I do think it's still a very prominent aspect of it. I mean, while Call of Duty is going down, there's still a dozen other game series that focus heavily or only on the actual multiplayer aspect. So when it comes down to it, I'm not really sure of these percentages. I feel like maybe it's a little bit different. There's another picture here that apparently has changed over time, but it's talking about the different age groups and what they do, why they play them in socialization, because socialization is apparently going up, which I also think a lot of people don't understand that they actually play games to socialize, whether it's to play a single player game to then talk about, or to play a multiplayer game just to, you know, find random people and talk to them, or in text chat or whatever have you. A lot of people do it to socialize. So 53% being escapist is a little high. I understand there's a lot of people like that, but I don't know. I feel it's a little too high. I understand the aspect of chilling and just relaxing, but it's a little weird. But we'll see. I always like looking at these studies personally because it's interesting to see where I fit. Right now, I'd probably say I'm more of a competitor. I collected achievements for a ranking for the most part, but I also do it to kind of, I guess, challenge. And that's the thing, is there's a mix of reasons of why people play games. So it's a little weird, and socialite as well. I mean, at the end of the day, online communication is still communication, and talking to people may not be direct communication, but is important. I was gonna say personal, but is important. So we'll move on from that. But overall, an interesting study nonetheless. And then we have probably news that I'm excited for, but also at the same time I'm not. So we had the closed beta for Killing Floor 3, which if you didn't play it, don't worry, you didn't miss out. You didn't miss much at all. But it was set to release later this month in just under 2 weeks at March 25th, and they announced a delay, and they haven't given a date. And this is kind of my hope that they go and completely rework the game entirely. Because if you didn't play it, it had fun. I'm not going to say it wasn't a fun experience, but it definitely struggles with being a live service, and it just wasn't going to be, it was not going to be the successful sequel to Killing Floor 2. Don't get me wrong, I liked how it looked, I liked how it played for some of the parts, but overall it wasn't that great. When it comes down to it, I do like the feedback actually coming back and stopping this from potentially being released, because Killing Floor 1 and 2 are well-loved games by people that played them. If you played Killing Floor 2, it's really, really fun. Even going back and playing Killing Floor 1, even though it's aged, is an enjoyable facet of just the first-person like survival wave genre that was there for the time. But all pre-orders being canceled is very, very scary for just in general, because it could mean that it's being canceled, which I don't really like. One of the things is I don't want to see it canceled, but at the same time I really don't want to see it. Like, I didn't want to see it in state. I didn't want to see a game series that I personally have sunk way too much time into kind of be turned into a new age dumpster fire. I didn't really want that, but hopefully Tripwire takes a bit of time to decide what they want to do with it and make it much more like Killing Floor 2 potentially. We don't need a hero shooter, we just need more Killing Floor. Don't change the formula if it works. But before we get into another thing I do want to talk about, I've always tried to kind of showcase other games and talk about them, but I never get a chance, so I kind of went to subreddit for indie games that I want to talk about. So I ended up finding a very cool survival horror game. I haven't gotten a chance to try it, but it does have a demo as well. It is Crypt Robbery. It looks pretty good. It looks like it's simplistic in some departments, but it looks like it has a chance to be a worthy time. And just throwing a mention out there, I'll try every week to throw a mention for some of these that I see that maybe could get somebody interested into it. The screenshots look pretty good, and the trailer itself is, it's definitely an indie game. It does have controller support apparently. I have not played it to test it, and the imagery in it looks pretty strong for getting some surprise and shock value. I'm always interested in survival horror, so I'll definitely try out the demo at some point. But hey, just FYI, Crypt Robbery on Steam, you'll end up finding the game and tell me how it is. But we're going to go to a much smaller piece of news. More of the same in the past couple of years. You require a Microsoft account to play Forza Horizon 5 on PlayStation. This is kind of expected. We've heard a bunch of account issues as time goes on, and a lot of this happens to be like tracking, just tracking like what you're playing, or like there's not a lot of like foundation to have a Microsoft game on like a Sony platform, so like you can't log in with PSN and then have it match. Plus there's still rivals at the end of the day. There's a lot going on there, but this isn't anything new. I think Sea of Thieves required it, but I know for a fact Minecraft required it. So it's just kind of weird to really care about this. If it's supposed to not be there, then hopefully Microsoft fixes it and kind of lets Sony players play Forza Horizon 5, because Forza Horizon is a really good game series that shouldn't have limitations like this. Though at the same time, just make a Microsoft account. It's not that hard. But ignoring that, we get to talk about the amazing Chrono Trigger. If you haven't played Chrono Trigger, it's one of the best games of all time, and even if you don't necessarily like the genre it's in, you still have to say that it's pretty good. When it comes down to it, it reached its 30th anniversary, which makes me feel insanely old. But overall, they have kind of announced some work to be done with Chrono Trigger, whether it's attaching it to other stuff in different IPs or just, putting maybe a possible port. I really hope they don't remake it. I feel like remakes usually miss the mark in how the game felt for the longest time. There's some remakes that I think do a good job. Resident Evil 2 comes to mind, but even then it feels like a different game. And I just don't want to lose the feeling of Chrono Trigger. Maybe this is me being, you know, kind of Doom headed, which my dog just kind of snored really loudly. Surprised me. But yeah, it's been released for 30 years now. Technically, yesterday it was 30 years in Japan, and a little less. I don't remember the North American release, but uh, there was a tweet talking about it. We will be launching various projects this year that go beyond the game world to express our gratitude to everyone who has played Chrono Trigger so far. The latest information will be posted on the Square Enix official X and Chrono Trigger PR accounts, so please look forward to it. So we might see a little bit of like information about new stuff potentially. Uh, yeah, and one of the things that's really sad is that these are designs that was, you know, it was a dream project of so many different people at the time, and Akira Toriyama, who did a lot of the design work on, the characters and stuff and so on. It's pretty easy to tell. Is not here anymore, so it'd be interesting to see if like they get someone to emulate the style, if they're going with a new game, or if they're gonna do something with like a remake, if they're gonna try and stay close as they can, or what. It's interesting to see. Uh, but when it comes to like overall the game, I would be happy to see more of it. I know Chrono Cross got a kind of redux or remake. It's really hard. Chrono Cross is not that great of a game, but Chrono Trigger is. And I really hope they're very careful of, if they do a remake. I know I've said it enough, but remakes could potentially ruin a lot of new people's opinions on the classic that is. Chrono Trigger is one of the greatest games of all time. Just don't ruin it. But the Ori and the Blind Forest devs, which is Moon Studios, is now self-publishing its action RPG, No Rest for the Wicked, which has a pretty interesting past. I want to kind of mention it because the kind of really weird, I don't really know, but Take-Two Interactive had the rights after Private Division was working on early access. Like, there's a lot going into this, but Private Division also acquired or founded some internal game development teams, including buying developer Rule 7, which released Roller Dome, and then was gutted, and we saw layoffs from them. And so a lot of the stuff was kind of sold or put into other companies, and then ultimately, when the No Rest for the Wicked ended up in Take-Two's kind of library, which then Moon Studios had to go to negotiate for, the actual game. So I'm interested to see. There's a big content that's supposed to happen. Supposed to add new locations, enemies, bosses. I haven't personally played the game. I've seen a lot of it. But when it comes down to it, there's supposed to be also co-op, which I'm always interested in. But it's exciting to see new news like that, and a lot of people are like, oh, this is also the 10th year anniversary for Ori and the Blind Forest. Any relation to that? And we'll see what happens. But I do happen to have skipped both Ori games. I did turn on Ori and the Blind Forest, but I've never tried Will of the Wisp. And maybe this will kind of bring it back to my attention and I'll end up playing it. But still interesting news. Excited to see. Now for more kind of stupid Take-Two news. when it comes to Take Two, they're trying to take down the GTA Online black market, which involves trying to get rid of a lot of players that aren't selling like legitimate items. They're using like hacking software and blah blah blah, which is really just setting up because GTA 6 is coming out at some point, and they want to have like preventions to actually like stop their new game from not having their good microtransactions, which I sit on the kind of I hate this side, because one of the things about Take Two doing it now feels very malicious. It already feels like you're too late. If you had a big problem with it, you should have been much more on top of it, to the point where, yeah, it would still be going on because people always want to get loopholes. They want to go around stuff, but you shouldn't have such a struggling facet of this now, of all things. But uh, it's really annoying, the type of excuses that Take Two Interactive is gonna end up running into. And I get it's against the terms of service of both Take Two and Rockstar, but at the same time, it feels really malicious to do it now, especially when you're already going to charge a ridiculous amount for a game. But we'll see what happens. It talks about player auctions specifically and how they take like 13% in fees. Roblox also sued player auctions quite recently for similar claims. Yeah, I don't really think it's a great thing to see this. Don't get me wrong. I do understand protecting your revenues, like your millions in revenue each year, and it's one of the best like profits you could ask for. But I still feel ultimately that I just this is gonna be a very nasty surprise for a lot of people for GTA 6. I think ultimately and this is my hope, and I'm usually not a doom person. Like I don't want like stuff to fail just to fail, but I think I want GTA 6 to fail if it is $100, because I don't want that to be the norm. I don't want the video game industry to have the ability to ask a consumer for any price that they happen to haphazardly pick. And I get that's not technically confirmed to be that price, but I don't want there to be any excuses. I get that a lot of people are like, well, there's inflation, there's the price of the development studio and stuff. At the same time, the projects were being worked on long time ago. For a lot of these, some of these games have been worked on 6 years ago, and now you're charging a price for $70, and because you have to recoup the loss because you failed at controlling your money in general for development. At the same time, there's also this consumer hatred by video game development studios where they blame consumers for failing, and so they're going to charge more, when in reality, at the end of the day, make better games and you won't have a problem. It's one of those things where, for the most part, I get it. Some stuff isn't advertised properly to receive really good like consumer base to then make profit on it, but GTA 6 is not gonna have that problem. It's one of the most hyped games in existence, which is another reason I hope it doesn't really do well, is because I don't think it's good for consumers to have this game be a financial success. It's gonna be, because it's just the way people are. They see GTA and they don't care anymore. But when it comes to having a new game in a long-running series, it's always going to have some type of success for old fans, just because. And my hope is that it doesn't make too much money past that, because I don't want a new era of video game development to start where the higher AAA, bigger companies are going to start charging $80 to $100, and it basically locks people out of playing games just throughout the whole year until it goes on sale, because some of these games do go on sale quickly if they're not good. Some if they're good, stay forever in their price margin. So I don't know, for for personal sake, I really hope that Take Two kind of fails here. Uh, I really hope they fail in all this. I understand terms of service have been broken, but I don't really like what's been going on with this. And I hope GTA 6 kind of blows back in their face. And they had a great thing with GTA 5, and it was better to not stretch it to another game that could potentially fail. Because I it has been a long time since GTA 5. And I get Red Dead Redemption 2 was a great game, but at this point, I don't expect much change from them. The combat has been the same since San Andreas. Even then, it's probably been the same since Vice City, really. And so when it comes to these games, I'm not really expecting much anymore. I get it, graphics are going to be good, but I don't know. I don't want consumers to be abused, and it feels like Take Two is setting up to abuse them maliciously at this point. But we'll see what happens as time goes on. That's basically it for today. A little shorter because we didn't have a lot of big topics that have come back. But we are also in the middle of March. I was going to try and look at the sales number for a couple games, but they haven't been released. Or it's kind of too soon to tell on a couple of them. We'll probably see and talk about them next week or the week after if I end up waiting to them. But that's it for right now. Thank you guys for hanging out. That's the news for a lot of the video games out. And yeah, make sure you stay safe.